And viewers, now we have a new statement coming from the Ukrainian president who's saying that, and I'm quoting him from the post that he has put out, "We are very grateful to the United States for all the support. I want the US to stand more firmly on our side. All Ukrainians want to hear a strong US position on our side. It is understandable that the US might look for dialogue with Putin, but the US has always spoken about peace through strength, and together we can take strong steps against Putin." In fact, it's a long statement that Zelensky has now put out, once again thanking the United States of America. Now, joining us on the broadcast is a very special guest. We have with us Mr. Kanwal Sibul, who is former Foreign Secretary. Let's try and decode what happened at the Oval Office last night with him. Mr. Kanwal Sibul, thank you very much for speaking with us here on Times Now. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. Firstly, I want to ask you, what do you make of what we saw at the Oval Office last night? Have you ever heard or, seen something like this before?
No, it's totally unprecedented. It's shocking that this should be the kind of exchange in the White House between the President of the United States and a visiting president, an open public spat before the media. You can have tough conversations behind the scenes, and they often happen where the two leaders can very frankly state their views, even if the conversation becomes a little heated. But to do this in front of the cameras and continue doing that is unprecedented. It's the most. Now, Zelensky, mind you, was totally out of line. There was no need for him to be argumentative, no need for him to, in a sense, talk down to the US president and to the US vice president. He should have been more alert, more tactful. And the moment he knew that things were going out of hand, he should have changed tack. Should have changed tack and be much more forthright in terms of his thanking the United States, trying to, in some ways, reach out to the US president in a more positive way, rather than disputing what he was saying and, in effect, challenging him and rejecting the notion that US had been vital for the battle that Zelensky is engaged in, because he was trying to pretend that we have been alone, and Putin was saying he will end the war in 3 days and God knows what, but we are continuing, etc., etc. He was unnecessarily provoking the US president. He was very badly briefed. The problem is that he has been lionized over the years so much by every European leader and by the US establishment. He, in fact, went and spoke to the U.S. Congress, and they were standing ovation, God knows how many times.
Right.
So he had annoyed in the past the British Defense Secretary. He has annoyed the German president. He has annoyed the French president. He has upset the Polish president because he's been very rude. And he has developed a sense of entitlement, which is remarkable. He thinks that the world owes him support because he is fighting on the behalf of the security of the world. He says that. I mean, this is not the kind of language you speak in the White House and the approach you take when you are speaking to the U.S. president. You should come with a sense of reality.
Yes.
So now, the kind of tweets that he has subsequently, which you have shown, he's trying to make up and trying to do damage limitation, but it's not going to help. This is not going to help because he has, in a sense, tried to say that you might be the most powerful country in the world, but I can stand up to you. Let's see.
It's interesting, the kind of points you're making, sense of entitlement, and perhaps a lot of damage has already been done. So let's also talk about, what happens next. But before that, on social media platforms, sir, you said Zelensky invited it by being argumentative instead of tactfully steering the exchange in a more positive direction, because there is something that he needs from the United States of America right now. So do you think what happened, what we saw, was in a way pre-planned?
No, not at all. Not at all. First of all, as you know, Trump doesn't have much time for Zelensky. He has been very critical of Zelensky in the past, he's called him a dictator. He's called for elections in Ukraine. He's talked about the $350 billion. Maybe this is not the correct figure of the money that the United States has pumped into Ukraine and got nothing in return. In the past, as you remember, he has said that each time he's such a great salesman, but he said it in a very negative way. He's such a great salesman that each time he comes to the United States, he goes back with a few $1 billion. And then, as you know, Vance has been also saying negative things about him. Mark Rubio, the U.S. Secretary of State, in his confirmation hearings, in fact, said very clearly that his question is not pumping money into Ukraine. Ukraine doesn't have any manpower left. And therefore, there is absolutely the need for a peace initiative. And then, as Vance said in this exchange, that in Pennsylvania, in October of a month, he mentioned that Zelensky had come and made some statements which the Trump people did not like. So there is a little bit of a history. There was also a talk that actually it's Macron who persuaded Trump to invite Zelensky to the White House. And the idea was that this would actually try and change the direction of U.S. thinking and policy towards Zelensky publicly and give the impression that there was a process of dialogue that was going on with Zelensky despite the past understandings.
Right.
Now, Zelensky should have understood this, and not become arrogant and emotional and think he can stand up to the President of the United States. Now, I'm not saying that as President of Ukraine, as President of an independent sovereign country, he has to be bullied by a foreign leader. I can accept that. But there is diplomacy. There is a way of handling things. You don't get into an argument like this. And the moment the argument became sharp, he should have stopped it.
Absolutely.
And turn the direction of the conversation in a way that it became more positive.
And first 30 minutes...
As I said, he's got a tremendous sense of entitlement.
Yes.
And therefore, he thinks that he can brave his way through.
And first 30 minutes seemed quite cordial and nice, and, you know, it seemed that it's probably going in a positive direction. Now, the question, sir, is... what do you think will happen next? Freeze on the military aid? Will the US still support Ukraine? Or has the relation moved to a point of no return?
Well, yes and no. The point is that if he now, for example, stops all military aid of every kind, ammunition, but much more importantly, access to the Starlink and giving intelligence information, which is very vital for Ukraine to continue the fight. Now, if that is stopped, then the Ukrainian front will collapse pretty rapidly. Now, if Trump was going to do that, then actually he would lose a very powerful bargaining counter with President Putin. Because at the moment, you know, he's playing a game where, yes, he will want peace. He's reached out to Putin. He has accepted the logic of Putin or Russia, that it is the expansion of NATO that has resulted in this conflict. But there is always at the back of all this is that if things don't go forward as Trump would want, then there could be a pushback by the Americans. He's talked about the past, how he imposed sanctions, how he gave Javelin missiles to Ukraine. He mentioned that in his exchange with Zelensky. So he wants to keep that option open, some kind of a pressure point on Trump, on Putin, on Russia. Now, if he were to do this and actually invite a very rapid defeat of Ukraine, then in fact it makes a compromise with Putin that much of the kind that he has in mind, that there is some concessions that should come from Russia, even potentially territorial concessions.
And we know, you know, how much Trump needs the rare minerals. I mean, that's very important. And one last question, sir, before we let you go. Now, Europe clearly seems to be rallying behind Zelensky. Italy has asked for an immediate summit. I want to ask you, should India also take a stand, maybe offer to mediate, or just be in this wait-and-watch mode?
Not at all. What is there in it for us? Let them fight it out. And European leaders, I've seen statements from Macron and Starmer and the Polish president and Scholz actually supporting Zelensky. Now, I thought that they would be a little more careful in what they do because
Right.
their relationship with the United States is far more vital than with Ukraine, despite the security issues involved. And therefore, while they were supporting Zelensky, they should have made a nod towards Trump and the United States of America and spoken about the very vital interest that they have in a good,
Right.
positive relationship with the United States. But now they want to play a loose game after having lost the Trump card, if I can put it that way.
All right. Mr. Sibal, thank you very much for joining us here on Times Now. Interesting insights, and thank you for sharing with us your perspective.